Knights and castles, kings and peasants, monks and scholars. These figures and objects instantly transport us to the medieval period known as the Middle Ages. But why is it called the Middle Ages? What came before it and what followed? Join us as we explore this fascinating era and uncover how it shaped the world we live in today. The Middle Ages, sometimes called the medieval period, lasted from the 5th to the late 15th century. It is called the Middle Ages because it's situated between the fall of the Roman Empire and the Renaissance era, marking a period in European history that came after classic antiquity and before the early modern period. The term Middle Ages comes from Italian historians during the Renaissance, who looked back at history and divided it up into three distinct stages. First, there was the grandeur of ancient Rome, a time of vast empires, sophisticated engineering, and flourishing philosophy. And then came what they saw as a long middle period, marked by the decline of centralized power, frequent warfare, and cultural stagnation, a time they viewed as a step backwards from the achievements of Rome. They were waiting for a new era of enlightenment and rebirth, an era we now call the Renaissance, where classical knowledge was preserved and imitated by various scholars, and innovation flourished once more. Because of this perspective, they labeled the medieval era as the Middle Ages, a term that suggests an in-between, almost forgettable time. However, this view was shaped by the Renaissance biases, and in reality, the Middle Ages were far more complex than just a time of darkness and decline. While some regions did experience turmoil, others saw remarkable advancements in art, science, and governance. Monasteries preserved ancient texts, universities were founded, and incredible architectural feats were performed. Trade routes expanded, new technologies emerged, and chivalry and courtly culture shaped literature and society. Rather than being a mere middle period between two great civilizations, the medieval period had its own identity, one of resilience, transformation, and enduring influence. Historians generally divide the Middle Ages into three main periods: the early, high, and late Middle Ages. Let's start with the early Middle Ages, which lasted from 500 to 1000 AD. Also called the Dark Ages, this period began with the fall of the Western Roman Empire. With no central authority to maintain order, Europe fragmented into small kingdoms and fiefdoms. Viking raids, internal conflicts, and economic decline made survival difficult. However, not all was lost. Monasteries became centers of learning, preserving ancient texts and knowledge, and meanwhile the Byzantine Empire thrived in the east, and the Islamic world saw a golden age of scientific and intellectual advancements. Next we have the High Middle Ages, which lasted from 1000 to 1300 AD. This was a time of relative stability, expansion, and cultural growth. Feudalism became the dominant social structure, with powerful lords ruling over vast lands and knights serving as their warriors. The Catholic Church wielded immense influence, and the Crusades, a series of religious wars, reshaped interactions between Europe and the Middle East. Trade flourished, cities grew, and universities like those in Paris and Oxford emerged as centers of education. This era also saw stunning architectural achievements, including the construction of grand Gothic cathedrals. Last we have the Late Middle Ages, which lasted from 1300 AD to 1500 AD. Marked by both catastrophe and transformation, this period saw the devastation of the Black Death, which wiped out nearly half of Europe's population. Social structures began to shift, and peasant revolts challenged the old feudal order. The 100 Years' War between England and France introduced new military strategies, and the decline of knightly warfare led to the rise of professional armies. Despite these struggles, this period also laid the groundwork for the Renaissance as new ideas, art, and scientific discoveries began to reshape the world. The Middle Ages were not simply an era of knights and castles, nor were they just a middle period between two golden ages. They were a time of resilience, innovation, and gradual transformation that left a lasting impact on history.